Hello and welcome to our Reboot review. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and this week we're discussing the episode Showdown. This episode originally aired January 10th, 1998 here in Canada, and in the US it would not go to air until January 2nd, 1999.
Mm, Still a case of taking the year to get in.
Yes, and it will not get any quicker. Alrighty, so number one film in America is still Titanic, surprising no one because it's Titanic.
Yeah, yeah.
For video games, we only have one, but damn is it a banger!
Yeah.
So it's, as far as I know, it's only the arcade version that's released at this time because I think the it goes to Dreamcast, but I don't think that happens right away. It's this
Mhm.
it's this little film or little film this little game called Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of the marvelous case of depending on how much of a fighter you were, in some cases you knew some little bit about this series.
I feel like I feel like a lot of people played these games, especially the second one.
Most indefinitely. Just either a case of just how much of a boom this made when it was first released in arcades, and any person with supposed sense would just be like, oh man, they released their arcade cabinet that has Marvel and Capcom characters. What's a Capcom? Well, that doesn't matter. There's Marvel characters, superheroes in this.
Well, and also like I feel like Capcom. Who do they have from Capcom here? Zangief, Ryu, Chun Li, Mega Man, like Captain Commando. Like there are some legit, like really well-known characters in there. And I mean, like, yeah,
Mm.
obviously they're the Marvel characters. Oh, I don't know. In '99, do more people know Captain America or do they know like Ryu or Mega Man?
That's an interesting thought. Because no matter what, even depending on if you were either much with comics or other sorts of things, you at least had ideas of some of the typical superheroes at the time. Like, I think at the very most, it would have been either X-Men, little bits of Spider-Man, possibly some of the older cartoons with Batman and other sorts of things. But even then, it would still bring up other sorts of thoughts of Marvel characters. Some of the other ones would be a little bit more maybe known, but not too much as in comparison to nowadays.
Yeah, because now like Captain America's had like three movies and been in like a bunch of like other ones, but in like '99, I feel like nobody outside of comic nerds who knew who Captain America was,
Mm.
or like people would know like Spider Man, Wolverine, Gambit because X Men was big,
Yeah.
and this is right around the time of the first X Men film. Actually, that might be like 2001.
Yeah, maybe more around then.
But yeah, I feel like it was a smart crossover, I think, for both of them because Capcom kind of got that a bit of the pull in from some of those Marvel characters, but also like probably got a lot of eyes on Marvel characters from Capcom fans.
Hmm.
Alrighty, let us go to the number one song in America, and it is still Elton John with Candle in the Wind 1997 slash Something About the Way You Look Tonight. However, next week he will be dethroned.
Very much interesting. So, out of curiosity, will we supposedly get a clue for what's going to be coming for next week?
Um, Sure, I can give you a clue for it. The band who will dethrone him released all of two albums, so they didn't necessarily have the longest career, but they were an import from Australia.
Mm, interesting. 'Cause I could think of a couple, like one or two, in the memory that I can think of, but still a case of nothing that immediately comes to mind.
I feel like once we talk about them next week, you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I know who they are.
Mm,
Anyway, let us get into the episode. So, reunited with
yes.
friends and family, Dot, Andrea, Mouse, Matrix, and their group of Binome rebels begin to invade the principal office where Megabyte and his army await. Meanwhile, Hexadecimal holds Bob against his will until he voluntarily does something benevolent for her. Matrix faces Megabyte alone before he escapes the system. Dun, 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 or at least attempts to. Alrighty. So, what did you think of this episode, Dave?
It was a nice, interesting mix of, with how this episode runs, there were memorable moments, but it was also the case of there was one or two additional scenes that were kind of like, oh, this was in the episode too, huh? Because there was one, I wouldn't say gruesome, with one particular sort of scene of one of the enemy binomes on the cannons of the principal offices getting blasted by the rebels. All that was left was its two body segments of the torso and the head, smiling, still kind of doing the gun motion of firing the gun. It's like, ha 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 ha. Anything more than that, that would be very morbid.
Yeah, they definitely. I feel like they upped the violence in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially the
And
fight.
again,
Go ahead.
and I suppose it's the only kind of way that you can kind of really go about it with the update to Matrix, him going through all of his story and with how everything's kind of been gone along. It kind of makes sense that it'd have to escalate that much to really show on with the show with how they've been going along with the story.
Yeah, and like the fight between Matrix and Megabyte, I feel like is more, maybe not more violent, but more physical than anything we've seen before. Even
Mm.
though, even though sometimes the animation looks a little bit, not
Yeah,
great. Like they're
there
like
was a moment. There
like
was
they're
the moment or two.
like they're fighting through in mud because they're moving so slowly.
I suppose it was either because I've heard some discussions online going through particular bits within this fight of certain things that were going on and how the fight sort of went along. And in some cases, I looked at it of they were trying to either build suspense, specific moments of how it sort of went along, but definitely with the program at the time, with the certain things that they could work with, yeah, I could also see it kind of going fairly slow with how much they kind of had to work with.
Oh, I'm sure it's a technical limitation. It's just like I wish they would have like animated it in a way to hide that a bit better. Because there are some
Mm,
moments where it's like, oh, that doesn't look good. But
mm,
I thought it was good. Although we'll get to my issue at the end. So we
righty.
have Hexadecimal holding Bob and having tea with him.
Yeah, just those couple fairly interesting interactions with Bob and Hexadecimal, kind of like old times, which was mildly cute. With first little bit of her dancing along with him against his will, and him trying to be logical, talk his way out of it, and then just near the last scene, just him having tea. It's like, oh, is this nice and adorable? Ditch runs away, brings it back.
Yeah, and then Bob ends up healing her mask, which makes Hex seemingly turn against Megabyte, maybe? Because she offers to like help Bob. So
Well, it's one of those cases of hexadecimal was never so much with megabyte in those sort of cases. She was always on her own sort of warpath.
that's true. Yeah.
But but especially with this, the biggest thing is she now technically doesn't have a mask anymore. Bob healed her face.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that, but okay, that makes
But it
sense.
was one of the things that with the updates to all the characters, and I suppose one of the particular thoughts of what is your thought of the new design of hexadecimal space with the small amount of time that we've sort of seen it with them smoothing it out, making it actually more a part of her body aside from just a face covering a hole.
Oh, I didn't really notice much of a difference, so
Mm,
I don't know what that says. But like, I thought it was fine. I've always liked her character design, so
okay. Because nice thing is they still work with hexadecimal as a character throughout the series, but we might be having discussions on which direction they decided to take it.
Oh, that makes me nervous. Because I really
Hold
like
that
her
nervousness,
character.
but just be ready to direct that in whatever direction you deem supposedly fit. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, because I really like her character. Okay, so let's get to the end bit of this episode with Matrix and Megabyte.
Yes. Since marvelous case of Megabyte starting off the fight, seeing Matrix slash Enzo being like, oh, you're still that same scared kid, either keeping his typical stare tactics of dealing with him, and Matrix answering to that by denting his chest with a fist.
Yes. So they have this long fight scene, which for the most part is pretty good. There are some moments of it where I'm like, well, that doesn't look great, or, well, that's kind of dumb, but whatever. Like, I'm willing to go with it. Um, and then we get to the end. So Matrix has Megabyte down, and he has his foot on his throat, and he has the little trident thing, and he's about to kill Megabyte.
Yes.
Now, spoiler alert, he does not kill Megabyte.
No.
Because, you know, hero and whatever nonsense. I kind of wish he killed Megabyte here. And I know that's not going to happen in a kid's show, but I kind of wish he did. Because I feel like that would have been a really great send off for Megabyte. And you could bring in, like. Because they've mentioned another villain who we're allegedly getting at some point, although now we only have 2 episodes left. They've mentioned Damon. And we haven't seen Damon yet. So I'm like, well, if we kill Megabyte, we can bring in this new villain to, like, up the stakes a bit.
Okay. And I think that's one of the interesting sort of things with it. That out of the entire series, one of the biggest things that you usually always think about is the characters that are usually in the show. And it's good with most of the heroes, other sorts of characters from there, but you also have to keep in mind the villains. And I think you used a fairly appropriate word of a send off for Megabyte from there. Because on the one hand, I can see from people's thoughts of Megabyte being the character he was from the very start to where he is now has either so much potential or so other many other things that people thought of or want to see him sort of do that I can sort of also understand that either show writers or executives being like, let's maybe keep him in our back pocket for later episodes to finish off the series or other sorts of things. But still, the case of with the show being canceled and not giving him that send off, either having him in the back pocket for other sorts of things to go on from there. Do you think it's a decent idea with what they went along with in the episode? Uh, quotations still keeping him alive in comparison to or Matrix completely deleting him like you've done in previous episodes with previous viruses.
Well, we don't even know if he's still around because he gets sucked into that thing that, like, Mouse sets some trap and he gets, like, pulled in and he's screaming. So I don't even know
Yeah,
at this point technically if he's still alive.
yeah, the web can be a very dangerous place.
Although we can assume he is because I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of something's he's going to have to be in the next 2 episodes at some point. Well, because otherwise we don't really have a villain unless they bring someone in next episode and have to, you know, have the series finale the next week with a new villain. Like, that seems weird to me. I kind of wish they killed him here. Now, the only issue is I don't know if they knew they were getting canceled at this point.
Okay.
So if
This was
if they knew the show was wrapping up and, like, okay, hard out at the end of the season, we're done, then it makes sense for him to not kill him and try to bring in a new villain for the last 2 episodes. If they were
well,
intending to build a 4th season, I would have killed Megabyte and brought in a new villain.
okay. Well, there's one supposed thing about Megabyte. Despite the fact that in his earlier plans, other sorts of things, usually don't work out, he usually always has something in his back pocket to keep things ready, which I think for these next two episodes will be something we'll be dealing with.
Fair enough. And even if Matrix quote unquote kills Megabyte here, like hypothetically, let's say the show got renewed for a fourth season, like
Mm.
you could just write around that and find a way to bring Megabyte back. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, we're talking about a show that takes place in a computer that deals with like viruses and stuff. Like, you could just be like, oh yeah, well, you know, Megabyte's like essential code was uploaded to this thing over here, and he's got a new body, and now he's Uber Megabyte. Like, you could have just come up with some excuse to bring him back.
Okay, going in those sorts of methods. Eh, it's a thought.
But I kind of wish that Matrix got that moment to kind of get rid of Megabyte and then kind of give him a bit more of that edge, because I do like him as an edgier character.
Okay.
Even
Though
though
I
again,
think
it's
the
a
case,
kid show.
especially with this episode heading into theirs, with Bob back and having a bit more of that uh, authoritative restraint, there have been the couple of incidences in previous episodes of not quite Matrix flying off the handle, but getting defensive, and Bob having to cool him off, or Andrea having to cool him off. So also seems like a bit of a build-up moment of, in the past, it's something he probably could have done. It's something we did see him do in a couple earlier episodes with annihilating that one virus in an old system. But with nowadays and just either the thought of the either specific villain, the sort of stuff going on, death being a mercy sort of thought process, but again, it could be argued.
Yeah, I the only thing I think is like, okay, like we're trying to show that like Matrix has had this character growth, which I totally agree with you on. That's what they're doing
Mm,
here. I just think
mm,
that the audience now see, this is difficult because if this was a show for like 14-year-olds, I would be like,
mm,
the audience would understand, like they're not going to hold that against Matrix because Megabyte's been a pain in his ass since he was a kid. Like, he's literally tried to
mm.
kill him since he was like 8. So nobody's going to
Meh.
be like, oh well, Megabyte, you should have like showed mercy. Like, no, like, fair enough.
Mm.
The fact that the show's for probably like 10-year-olds, though, I'm like, I kind of understand why you want him to maybe not kill someone so openly.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, and I suppose one last little thing about the episode, a couple little thoughts, but sort of relating to where we are within the episode, with opening up a portal in the web for Megabyte to get sucked into. Who else is in the web but the web surfer coming through? It's like, hey guys, how's it going? Who was that guy been sucked in?
Oh yeah, Ray Tracer pops back for about like 10 seconds.
Yeah, so he gets to join in on the fun, supposedly.
Yes, I do enjoy that character. Anyway, I think that is going to be it for this time. If there's nothing else, next week we are discussing the episode System Crash. Megabyte is sent to the web, and mainframe begins to crash. Da da da.
Oh no, it's like that one first episode with Matrix and Andrea being the new selves all over again.
Yes, but we've got Bob back. So,
Yeah.
alrighty. So, if there's nothing else, I've been Paul.
And I've been Dave.